And this episode is kind of a timeless teaching about the connection between outer planets to inner planets, that is Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Aries, to our personal planets, that is Sun, Moon, Mars, Venus, Mercury, and to a lesser degree Jupiter and Saturn too. Okay, so why am I doing this episode? Okay, recently I offered my signature reading, which is about outer planets to inner planets. And right now, for the chart of this episode, we have Jupiter day, Jupiter hour, Mercury ruled ascendant and midheaven with Mercury on the ascendant. So quite angular Mercury and quite angular Moon. For those of you wondering about like the chart of the time where I'm broadcasting. And so I was talking about outer planets to inner planets. And there are many approaches to this. If you take a look at evolutionary astrology, a lot of people have this tendency to go to, let's say, look at your Pluto and tell you you are meant to transform your relations with, let's say, trust, if it is around Venus, Pluto Venus hard aspects, or you are meant to evolve through crisis in relationship. And they mention the word evolve a lot. But then if you actually look for, let's say, I don't know, Mercury opposing Uranus, you'll see it in Adolf Hitler's chart. Um, and, and there are crises to do. Okay, it's not just the 12th house. It's not just the 12th house. It's not just get with your luminaries. There are crises to do with outer planets to inner planets in hard aspects. Um, And then there are the people like Gladys Post today that talk about, hey, let's mention also the good stuff. Okay? Let's mention that, let's say you revolutionize your life if it is Uranus. Okay? What is a good approach to this? Okay? The way I see it, I want a balanced approach. I want a balanced approach. I want you to understand that those gains are, after crisis, a significant amount of even hardship and stress, even in the most harmonious aspects. Yep. There are no easy aspects to outer planets. There are no easy aspects. This is the spirit of the time. And the why? So this is an encounter between the slowest moving planets, okay, except for Sadhana, between the slowest moving planets to the fastest moving planets. Okay? Even in a personal chart, the fastest moving planet is the moon. When you have a moon in hard aspect to the sun, okay, the conjunction is called Sadasati. The opposition is pretty much the next horrible after the conjunction. And then you have the squares. Okay? So the cycle of the moon and Saturn is a significant cycle. Sadasati people sometimes lose their parent or their caregiver, especially the mother. Okay? Opposition as well, or to some degree squares. It's a freaking difficult transit. It's a very difficult transit. You have to be resilient, and your emotional safety is being contracted, and you're feeling anxiety for, and that lasts for like, largely the 3 years that Saturn is in the opposite sign or in the same sign with the Sadasati. And this is basically an encounter between a very slow timeline and a very fast timeline. Something that you used to go about your day is now like a film that's being stretched to the images that comprise the film. Okay, outer planets, the same. And the hardest you're going to feel it is around the 2 or 3 years of the transit itself, tight orb. But it is also true that you're being prepared for it around when the outer planet ingresses to the sign that it's in. Okay, let's say Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto in Capricorn is going to work through your Capricorn and Cancer house and your Saturn and Moon. I just talked about that. For the entire duration of Pluto in Saturn's sign. Setting healthy boundaries with, let's say, your caregiver. Or if you are the caregiver, then setting healthy boundaries as a caregiver. It's not a one-day thing. But with the outer planet, unlike with Saturn you're asked to mature, you're asked to grow resilient. With the outer planet, there's something in the spirit of the time that when it meets a personal planet, you are an agent of delivering. Okay? And because this is such a slow moving planet, those are generational changes that are going to be permanent for at least the cycle of the outer planet until it comes to the point where it is. For Pluto is 248 years, for Neptune even more, I don't remember, it's more than that. For Aries 500 years, and for Uranus is yes, 160 years. Okay, 84 years is the entire cycle. Sorry, yeah. 84 years is the entire cycle for Uranus, which is the fastest of them all. Okay, Uranus spends around 7 years in a sign. Pluto around between, I don't know, 15 to 20 years. Neptune even more, 2 decades and then some. And Aries has been in Aries since 1929. Okay, so when we talk about your being an agent of a generational change, it means that your struggles and your story are a part of a theme, of a zeitgeist of changing relations in those topics. Okay, let's take the example of Pluto Capricorn. Changing relations between the person and the government. So whether it's caregiving, only now as I'm saying this, caregiving, because I had this oppositing by sign to my moon, and when and that had to do with being exposed to children being separated from their mothers not receiving assistance, the way that we judge a single parent or parents, that we judge them, we deem them as non-functioning, where in fact what needs to change is the spirit of the time in regards to the relations between being a parent or a caregiver, and the government and the organization and religion. Okay, with Mercury it would be, okay, the relation between the children and the state. We had the exposure of the young children in Israel during the time of Pluto in Capricorn. I don't remember what's in Cancer for the state of Israel, or what's in Capricorn, but this is major. Okay, this is major. Basically, it's a story where children were kidnapped and made medical experiments on, and I believe the next phases we're going to discover about how many of them were sold to human trafficking or to pedophiles. And this happened in the land of the Jews after the Holocaust, or the land of the Zionists after the Holocaust. And during the Holocaust, similar things were happening to Jewish children. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And it's not the end of the story. This still happens with children. So it's that type of changes that you're bringing to the world. Okay, let's say you're living in a world where there is no childhood. A child is expected to work. They put nets on the windows so the child will not jump to their death. Okay, in various places around the world. And it is your job to bring in a new future. That is an outer planet to inner planet. Okay? I do not want to gaslight you about the meaning of this. When the encounter happens in transit, it can be a 20-year cycle. If it is Aries, you're going to spend your entire life being a part of these growing and evolving changes. I don't want to gaslight you about this. This is why it's so hard. Okay? When I was in 2007 and I felt like my yoni, I didn't even know to call it that way, kind of have a wisdom. It kind of senses something that I cannot explain in words. And it took literally 15 years until I would, after being Me Too veteran, be exposed to sexual education teachings of like, talk to your yoni, channel your vagina, and listen to the wisdom it has to say, and so on and so forth. Okay? So it's like, well, our whole body has an intelligence to tell us. Um, but that was 20 years where I couldn't even talk about this with anyone. Or things that I knew were not correct, were not right, or teachings that I knew were not correct, were not right. It took 20 years for people to start talking about this. Okay? For example, attraction matters also in marital relationships. It's not just, yeah, you need to get to know the person, you also need to be attracted to the person. It's not something, because will and consent within marriage matters. They're not just expected to sleep with you. Or you're not just expected to sleep with them, even in marriage. I knew this is true. I know this is true because it makes difference to the health of the body. It's good to your longevity. Okay? But it takes a while for the world to get that, to understand that. And that is both the harvest, where you're like, oh, I was of the first people who thought about this, who talked about this, who mentioned this, who acted in favor of this, which is what you're asked to do, whether it's by speech, by art, by technology or a product that you're making, or something of a blue ocean strategy where nobody knows that thing yet and you're growing awareness, so it's a process, and then by the time it booms, then everybody's trying to imitate your product. Like this outer planet to inner planet reading. Okay, people in the traditional astrology community, they don't like to even mention the fact they're talking about outer planets. They think we should be doing this with the 7 planets, and because those planets are so slow moving, then it's very difficult for people to give a reading to them. It's a blue ocean. Giving my signature is the blue ocean. But of course, the minute I'm doing this post, people are going to start incorporating them into their own readings. Okay? And yet there's this place where you're standing and you're like, but this is the most important thing. This eclipses and stuff, this is the most important thing. It's going to change your life with the spirit of the times. Is that the things is a part of even your legacy that you bring to the world, kind of like by force. Or if you think you're insignificant in the world, it's not just your midheaven. What you do with the inner planets and the outer planets, by just coping with something for various years, even decades, you're bringing something, you're a part of a timeline that brings something to the world. Okay, I got this, I understood this because my very first beginning with astrology had to do to outer planets, to inner planets in the composite chart, and challenges that the couple may face and what to do about it. And this teaching, if you go back 2 3 years, I was talking about outer planets to inner planets, and the way that you are a part of the spirit of the times with that. And still, people around me are doing other things. Okay, and I'm kind of like a lone duckling in the astrological discourse, because you would either have modern astrologers that are like evolutionary and, oh, Pluto in Capricorn is the falling apart of corporation and organization. It's like they're all falling apart, they're all this, they're all that. It's like, yes, it is also the fact that you went to your social worker, to your psychologist, to your psychiatrist, to academia, and they were all offenders. And then to one of your, bosses, or you find out that your parent also have these patterns, whether of speech or whatnot, of control. This is also Pluto and Saturn sign. Okay, it's not just, oh, everything is falling apart, they are weak, they are this, you're evolving. Yeah, you're also going through tremendous isolation, where taboos are being discussed and you can't really stay too early, because then you're a conspiracy theorist, then you're crazy, then you're paranoid, and of course it has medication. Okay, that's also Pluto in Capricorn. That's also Pluto in Capricorn. So when I talk about outer planets to inner planets and you with the spirit of the time, I'm talking about something you're gonna spend significant amount of your life dealing with. And it's not only fluffy, even in the most harmonious aspect. That being said, it's not just, well, you're going to have these crises around relationships. Pluto to the ruler of your seventh, or Neptune to the ruler of your seventh. You're going to have addictive patterns in your relationships. You're going to have ideation and devaluation around the theme, of partnership. Or if it's a luminary, then your relationship with one of your parents is either very idealistic, or the lack of boundaries there, or maybe one of your parents was addicted to something. Okay, I'm not leaving you at that, because you're like, okay, Shelley, what am I supposed to do with that? Okay, I know this. Maybe you feel a sense of validation of something that already happened, or maybe have Neptune around your ascendant, like I'm having right now in the past years. It's separating, but not now. It's going to come back. Okay, and you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do about it? So I'm going to run into when I have to surrender a significant amount of my life path. My body is going to feel like it's not really in my hands for a significant amount of time. I'm going to be either a spy or surrounded by spies. There is a tendency to have like addictions, and so on and so forth, or or it's not going to be, I'm going to be prescribed drugs that are addictive, or drugs that could kill me, and I will have to kind of like find my power, because Neptune is sextiling Pluto. I will have to both surrender and find my power and not know which is which for 3 4 years. Thank you very much, and this is what you charge me $400 for. No. Okay, it's also understanding that you're bringing in a world where people have more awareness that addiction is usually to prescribed drugs. So the person who is addicted is actually a person who took responsibility over their life and went to see a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and got a prescription, and thought that this is how I'm taking responsibility over my life. I'm not going to ruin my life. I'm not going to blame other people for my misery. I'm going to go to therapy, and there you are prescribed. I have a very good friend that is dealing with addiction to, I think, Xanax, and it's because they had a trial against the offender, and the university where the offender was teaching, by the way, something to do with kind of like psychology, welfare, and stuff like that. and had human trafficking network within the academia. So she was a whistleblower, but she was doing it through litigation. I was doing it through satire. I had no backup whatsoever. And the isolation that she had to deal with for 8 years, not being able to talk about it, and having to take like sedatives for relaxation. And then now she's dealing with addiction. And she doesn't have the money to go to a withdrawal institution. So what we think about people who have addiction, or what we assume that these are, some people think it's weak people. People think it's people who made a certain decision that was wrong and now they're paying for that with their life. Sometimes it's actually the people who made all the right decision, took the fiercest responsibility, literally have been a warrior in favor of our society, and this is what they get for saying no to violence. Okay? That is what such a transit is coming to expose. That, hey, those people that are addicted, okay, when I was in Netherlands, I was that close. Okay, it was in between houses. One of the people that was with me was a security officer for the red light district. They were the person to lean on of everyone. Everybody would tell their troubles to them. And when they met me, the first thing they said is, I didn't even say anything. It was like, please don't tell your troubles to me. I'm sick of people telling their troubles to me. I need to rest. And I was like, what's going on? And I realized what was going on. Okay, and they had tremendous stress, worried about a family member, and they were using drugs to keep basically to keep working, to face the stress, and they had and to try alone to withdraw, and everyone around them, they just needed water with sugar. But because it was the evening, the door was closed and they were deprived of water with sugar, and they were starting to sweat and have withdrawal symptoms alone. Okay, that is a reality of people who deal with addiction. So if this transit is happening to you, one of the possibilities that you're going to be experiencing is either you have to say no to medication so not to have addiction, which was my case. I did not agree to take Lorivan or Xanax. I kicked out beta blockers, and then I didn't even know. I just felt it's not good for my body. And then the information started coming up, and there was great corruption that was around these things as well. And if you're in between houses, if you're not taking these drugs or that drugs, i.e., the cartel drugs or the pharmaceutical drugs, you're deprived of help. Nobody helps you to find the housing because you have a bad economic situation. Nobody helps. You either have to accept the tag of I am crazy or I'm addicted. Even though in 2023 there are many people who work in multiple jobs and don't have a place to sleep at night. What if you don't have a driving license? Okay? And if you have a driving license but you don't have money for gas, so a part of your job is to learn about these things, to be aware, to spread information in whichever is okay. For me, Jupiter is in the 11th house. So I'm talking about this. So I'm raising awareness. Um, but you understand that it is a crisis, it is a difficulty. You are exposed to things that are difficult, and you have to find your power so you will not become addicted to prescribed drugs by people who care about you. Okay? Who genuinely care. But not all medical personnel are like, that they don't know what's energy or whatnot. Um, a lot of them are actually caring and they see you like a child. Okay, they just genuinely believe because they are misled with they only have are being exposed to certain research and not to other research. They genuinely believe they're doing it in your favor and you just have to do it, or they genuinely believe there's no risk of addiction for you, or they just want you to be able to how to relax. Okay, the person who prescribed the drugs to my friend, they were trying to help her to cope with the reality of what she was going through, to the litigation. Yeah, they were not trying to get her addicted or anything like that. They believe in doing the best thing. And yet those circumstances are like you're surrendering something. This is Neptune. Okay, you have to surrender some certain things, as well as whenever it's possible to find your power, within those things. Okay, and to raise awareness or to help such people. You're a part of the people who are going to bring in a new realization about drugs, prescribed or not, healing prescribed or not, psychiatry and psychology, shamanistic healers and conventional healers. You're just a part of it. And you got, and if it's hitting your chart natally, you're gonna spend an entire lifetime delivering this information. It's gonna be, and this is a part of your legacy. Okay, it's a part of your legacy. It's also true to wherever the outer planets are in your chart. So I have Uranus in the 10th house. Uranus is about the revolution. Whatever I do, wherever, first of all, it is between my parents. When I was a child, anytime, even in the lightest form, my parents would tell me, but I'm your parent, or but I'm your mother. I was like, no, you're a human being, I'm a human being, we address each other as human beings. And then I had to find out that there are also situations, for example, with sexuality, that it's not just that, okay? There is a power difference that needs to be tended to. Okay, children can't consent. And I'll even go as far as telling why children can't consent. You're telling me, Shirley, you just say something and it's just a mantra. No, it's not just a mantra. Sexuality is containing various things. For some people, they have aggressive fantasies. It's what we don't know that we don't know. It's also the 12th house. It's requiring a level of awareness and enlightenment that even for the most adult and responsible people and mature people is challenging, is the things that come up. So of course a child does not know, acknowledge, or understand, and cannot be an equal partner in a sexual situation. It doesn't mean that they don't have like inner sexuality, or that they do, like they may see things from past life, and I know I had it since childhood, but it doesn't mean that they can be a participant in a sexual situation. So if you are that child, or if you are in this situation, as I soon discovered, even in my late 30s, in my mid late 30s, with my psychologist, I discovered that he had certain aggressive fantasies that I was absolutely not being able to participate as a willingly consensual partner. Not that it helped me, but but that was the situation. Alongside things that I really liked, you know, and um, that is something that when those outer planets hit you, it's a part of the spirit of the times. Okay? Uranus in my 10th house, it means wherever I go to work, wherever I'm a boss or have a boss, it's going to be Uranian stuff. Some revolution is going to be there, some unusual stuff. And because Aquarius, it's my 12th house, there can be whistleblowing. I can expose scandals of my bosses happening with me to veteran. Um, and I can't rely on that being consistent. I can't rely on having a fixed, safe job environment. It's just not gonna be. Uranus is in my 10th. It also means that I'm fit for the profession of astrology, because it's actually centering for me to look at the chart every day. So this is, for me, it's a centering practice. And when you know this, when you have this information, then you're not so concerned about when is it going to be over. Or you're not so concerned because you understand that you're working on your legacy here. For me, Uranus means that whenever, if I try to have a job, it's going to be a revolution all over again. If I was honest, and if I was, if CVs were honest, I would say I am a whistleblower. I will be exposed to everything that doesn't work in your organization between the from the seed, literally Jupiter rules semen. Okay, from the seed, and I'm going to unroot it. Okay, I have Jupiter in Capricorn sign publicly. This would be without your control. It would happen suddenly and compulsively. I will not be able to stop myself from doing that, but I will revolutionize your business. I will liberate your business. And it's going to be a crisis because what I'm going to bring up, what I'm going to dredge up, not even you are ready for, and you might either not be aware of it or it's some, skeletons you have in the closet. And by the way, I require a very high salary because in order to just live and balance my nervous system, I need to eat the most nourishing food, organic food or organically grown fish. And I also need to travel a lot, and I constantly need to be on the go to meet people from different nationalities, and may have conflict with them that's gonna harm your reputation because I'm being honest and I am asking questions, and I may ask politically incorrect questions. You can understand why it's very difficult for me to find a daytime job, okay? Because I already know what I'm going to face there. I already know. I'm mature enough to know my 10th house or my 6th house, but in this situation, my 10th house. And so what can this person do? Either decide I'm a revolutionary and consent and go all in. And even when I did astrology, okay, people talked about standardization. I jumped like the bull, because I know this from academia, because I know this from the medical field, because I know this and how much racism is underneath this standardization and how useless it is in every profession. So even in the astrological community, I'm a reactionnaire, a revolutionnaire, okay? So even astrology was not remediating enough for me. You get it? This is a really big deal. If I didn't know that, I was like, oh, when would this instability around my being in a public eye end? Or when will this instability with, bosses end? When will it end? But knowing that, I'm like, okay, this is my life. And the downside is that it's in the natal chart. It's not a transit. Transit is like 20 years. Beyonce had if I believe Beyonce could be a Libra ascendant because Beyonce had Uranus in her 7th when Uranus was in Aries. And then she was thinking about divorcing Jay-Z and then wrote, of course, music about this. Okay? Comes Uranus in Taurus. We don't hear about, divorce stuff. We just hear about them being a strong couple again and so on and so forth. So that was Uranus through her 7th. That was what it made. That was like, hey, I'm leaving. I'm going towards, a new beginning in my life, and eventually decided to stay, save his business, and wrote an entire album and have her show and her show with her husband around this topic. Okay, this was Uranus. This could have been Uranus in the 7th because Uranus rules divorce. But if she had it natally, okay, my parent had natally Uranus connected to a hard aspect in the 7th. Not only because we have Moon on each other ascendants, on each other's descendant in the 7th, not only did they divorce their partner after being, 13, 14 years together, but me and them had to have space, Uranus, to maintain connection, and there were even years that we could not be in contact because of this. Okay? We're just a part of the spirit of the times where the fact that you're somebody's parent, the fact that you're somebody's spouse does not mean you have to live in the same house. Does not mean you have to see each other every day. Does not mean, you don't need space from each other. Does not mean you're not separate people. Okay? That is an outer planet to inner planet. You tell me they don't matter? They matter a lot. They matter a lot. They're a part of your legacy. And legacy is not a one-time thing. Okay? Legacy is not just, oh, I made this, billions from this show in Dubai or something that I worked my entire life for, like Beyonce, or those visible things. Legacy is also the invisible people that you helped along the way, where they were suicidal and you were thinking about suicide, and then you were just helping each other out. And when you cross over, you're gonna see that more than you're gonna see, your paycheck, however big it is. And legacy is also the relationship that you and your partner bravely decided to open or close, instead of separating, and that worked for you and saved your marriage. And you are a part of a leading, couples groups that were having these non-monogamous relationships, or these issues like Beyonce and Jay-Z, where there was cheating in the relationship, and that was a part of the spirit of the time. Black community, the black woman, the challenges of the black man growing in the projects and kind of like learning to believe himself and not having to have a proof of him being attractive in every woman he meets, whichever age, and standing for there and finding security, bringing to the world something that he didn't have as a man, he didn't have provided for, and he has to, bring it from scratch, as well as the black woman, just like the most deserted, the intersectionality and all that. That was Beyonce's, I think it was Foundation album. Okay, it was not just her personal story. To me, this is significant of Uranus in the seventh, okay, Uranus in the 17 Aries, but and that would make her Libra ascendant. But that is the story of the outer planet to inner planet. If it was Saturn going through the seventh, they could have like broken up and they're like, oh, we don't talk about this, it's between us, it's so, we just decided to say goodbye, and there could be like tremendous things underneath that we don't ever get to hear of. But Beyonce, the most private person on earth, as a public performer, made an album about her husband cheating on her, and put this as art in public, discussing also the phenomena of black society, as well as Jay-Z addressing that and kind of like addressing, the pitfalls of being a black man, even when you are successful, and even when you have made it out of the projects, and even when you marry a Beyonce. Okay, when you marry someone who's attractive, someone who is also financially stable, that you could have a home with, and kind of like feel like the ugly duckling next to her, because you never got, nobody ever told you you're attractive, nobody ever told you that you're beautiful. So, and you just have to pray. It's not like you have a father standing there for you and teaching you how to be a man, the boundaries and so on and so forth. So the most private couple, what is Uranus, is exposure, it's like the whistleblower, exposed the inner gut of their private lives in their art and made a lot of money on it. But they were not just addressing their own problems as a couple, but how that is a part of the spirit of the times, of the movements of enlightenment in Black society in Black America. This is outer planet to inner planet transits, and those are the part of things that can happen. So when I give you a reading, I'm not going to ignore the fact that it's going to be very prolonged struggle around those inner planets to outer planets. If it's natal, whenever that is triggered, whenever you have like the Pluto square or the Uranus square or the Uranus opposition, it's going to be, it's going to be very much alive. Then It's a thing, you know? But then from the tremendous struggle, you can have tremendous wealth, tremendous legacy, whether it's wealth in cash or in connections or in spiritual growth. And this is what the evolutionary astrologers are all for. It's kind of like you're going to evolve. It's like whenever an evolutionary astrologer gives you a reading, say your soul is going to really evolve here. It's kind of like there's going to be a significant amount of trauma and crisis to your life, in which you're going to come out victorious, but also defeated. And your defeat is your gain. It's like if if evolutionary astrologers were honest, and I love evolutionary astrology. I love, okay? I can't stop, watching, Tom Jacobs whenever he uploads something, or kind of like the notion of the path of the evolution of the soul and seeing what it's meant to do. We need evolutionary astrology, and we need evolutionary astrology with more than one planet. Um, that being said, whenever somebody tells you, around those other planets, oh, you're going to really evolve here, it is something that's going to give you a tremendous amount of resilience. Okay, resilience is a red flag word. It means you have a ton of trauma and then you just go numb. And then you find yourself somehow again with it, and then you are like resilient. Okay? Oh, you're going to gain a lot of wisdom from here. Wisdom is trauma. I was a very silly girl when I was reading Psalm when I was a little girl, and I asked to be a wise like Solomon, and I repent that. I repent that deeply. Okay? So this is something that you just kind of like need to understand. And yet, since those things are a part of your life, since if you're coming to me for a reading, you're probably like, okay, I get that this thing is ongoing, that it has been ongoing, but I'm not sure what is the venue, what is the outer planet that it connects to, what is the venue, is it by transit, is it natal, and what are things that I can do about it, or where am I an agent of the change in the world, and how knowing this can help you act more benefically. If I know that I have Uranus in my 10th, I know that, if people say, oh, you're in a deep financial crisis, or when I was, let's say, in between two homes, oh, just get yourself a job. Yeah, but this is going to be another crisis and another revolution, and they're going to hate me, and eventually they're going to be liberated and transformed. But that means you are in trauma right now every single day, and now you're supposed to enter a place where your job there is traumatic to both yourself and to everyone around. Okay, you're like you're like instigating the change that the suicide bomber wants to instigate, but without being a suicide bomber. Lucky that my Uranus is in 12th degree and not 11th. Because I could be a suicide bomber if that was the 11th. Okay, I could just say I'm going to work in the, I don't know, whatever, sensitive place that has to do with religion or something like that, and then it's like I go bomb, killing everybody. It could be, but for me, I missed it by a degree, and that means that I am going to revolt in other ways. Or be a part of like a revolution towards this, or whistle blow this. And because Uranus is a slow moving planet, it can be something that takes a while. So it could be like, like if you were one of my first workplaces, you're kind of like dealing with that now, 18 years later. You're like, oh, there's this person that says, that talks of the, oh shit. Oh, they didn't forget about us. No, I didn't forget about you, because now I have to make an income. And I have to think about my working experiences from the first jobs and kind of like what went right, what went wrong, what would I do different. Oh, I'm a whistleblower. Oh, I'm a whistleblower. Oh, but I don't trust any corporation that even would send me to do whistleblowing, because they would do nothing with it. So I just whistleblow, having no backup. Now I'm already in conversation with society. It's kind of like, okay, humanity needs to grow up. Humanity needs to adopt its working market to us, rather than we keeping adopting ourselves all the time, and creating tremendous stress for ourselves and others. Things need to change. But even when the working market changes, okay, and I've seen tremendous changes to the working market. Whenever I worked at, something tremendously big has changed and even improved. Okay? That being said, I, Shirley, that has this Uranus in the 10th natally, is going to keep having this Uranus in the 10th. I can be an astrologer, I can be a revolutionary, I can be a whistleblower, I can be maybe a mad scientist. What did I study? Philosophy of science, okay, history and philosophy of science. Not officially. I studied politics and governance, and you just kind of like when, and then and it just happened. So you can see that knowing this, it means that even the day after the revolution, okay, the day after the revolution, Shirley will not just have a safe working place. Shirley has Uranus in the 10th house. It's natal. It's natal. It's my natal promise. It means I've done being revolutionary here. Okay, let's be revolutionary there. Or maybe I don't know, become a parent, and then I'm somehow unusual and revolutionary as a parent. It's like, no, Eureka, it's already starting to happen. I don't even have children. It's like, no, we're not supposed to expect all that from a parent. A child needs to have a parent, and that means that the parent has to have a life. I'm not supposed to give up my life when I bring children. There has to be something that facilitates, but it doesn't mean that when the world changes, Shirley will have a happier parenting experience, because she will still be rebelling the next thing. And my moon in conjunct in it from the 5th, so there would be a child that would be having this kind of signature of that moon in conjunct Uranus. And maybe the child will be rebellious in some way, or emotionally rebellious, or whatnot. Okay? Many things. So when it's natal, it means that you're learning, you're bringing in you're learning to cope with this. But let's say it's Pluto. Pluto transforms something from the core. One of the things that I do with Pluto, you will laugh. I have a symbol of Pluto. If I have, let's say, a corner in the room that is calling for a change, I'm gonna put the symbol of Pluto there. Suddenly I would have plants there. Suddenly I would have a different arrangement of the house. Suddenly, like, something is being transformed, because Pluto is transforming. Yeah, and then when you're done with transforming one thing, you're gonna be transforming another thing. Wherever Pluto is in your natal chart, and whatever Pluto is transiting is going to tell you what is it that you're transforming. Pluto is in my 9th house, whole sign speaking, and entering my 12th house. Now it's in the 11th house, okay? So I'm giving you these readings of outer planets to inner planets. But Pluto is also entering my 12th house. It means that the international, for example, the connection between academia, uh, traveling, religion, and jail, psychiatry, hospitals, retreats, and isolation. I'm going to be one of the leading voices in this, and I already am beginning to be, and I've already met certain people that are going to accompany kind of like this conversation. And it doesn't mean that when I'm done with that, my life is like, okay. With my Pluto square, maybe, but I still have Pluto in the 9th. Okay, I will still be exposing taboos in religion, occult, psychology, okay, psychoanalysis, psychodynamic psychology, for example. Um, it has a lot of great promise, because it's about basically dredging up the hidden facets of your relational style. But it also means that that you are in a very power imbalanced situation that is extremely dangerous, and nobody tells you that because they want you to keep paying $1,000 for a meeting if you're in the United States and you're seeing a good therapist, um, that will end up sleeping with you if it's every other patient, no matter how many regulations, that if they can't sleep with you in the physical, they will invade your energy. Now they know what's energy. That will try to psychically attack you, um, and you will have to deal with that all alone. And there are chances, and the chances for that happening are way higher than you think. Does it mean that psychoanalysis is bad, that psychology is bad? No, you can read a psychology book and have great insights. Doesn't it mean that some people don't move around without their psychologist and they're actually getting a lot of benefit? Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. But what about those people that nobody talks about? Is psychology a do no harm profession? Absolutely not. It cannot exist in the operation of do no harm or ethical medical practice. Am I not thankful to the insights I got by psychology? Of course I am thankful. And that is true. Okay. This is having a planet of psychology and psychoanalysis in the ninth house, which is academia, which is religion, and so on and so forth. And so let's say I'm done with psychology all of my life. Now there is religion. You know, I'm kind of like a Voltaire. So, and let's say I'm done with religion. Now there's spirituality. Now there is science. Now there's sexuality. Now there's traveling worldwide. Okay, you're not done with it. It's in the natal chart. It's annoying. Okay, it's annoying because if it's a hard aspect like mine, you study through crisis. It's like there are gonna be some crises, and I'm like, oh, I don't like to hear it. But here is what Pluto rules, and here is what your legacy is going to be about. And when you come to me, you're already dealing with something like this. We understand what are those things, and unlike a personal reading where it's about resolving your trauma or resolving what is the lesson that you need to learn, and following this your life would be good. You know, you're going to continue on having those things. Now if it's, let's say, personal planets, so let's say Mercury, Moon, and you're neurodivergent. Okay, your Mercury is, let's say, opposing your Moon. So you feel something, but the words come out different. Or it's difficult to communicate your emotions, or you feel detached from your emotions because you think it's in the place where you should feel. The minute you accept this about yourself, you're going to deal with it for a significant amount of your life. But it's going to be more about, well, that's me. If there's no outer planets hitting there, it can be, well, that's me, and you're going to operate within the zeitgeist. That means the changes about how we see neurodivergent people, how we think about communication, how do we address people. They're not emotionally invalid or emotionally disabled. It's kind of like, well, you work differently. They are going to arrive to you kind of like they arrive to the rest of humanity. Okay? But if, let's say, that is being triggered by Uranus, now you are an agent of this change, whether it's by transit or natally. If it's by transit, then you know for the upcoming 7 years, you're gonna have a significant role in society. And it doesn't mean you're going to be a public figure. It just means that you're part of a very tremendous change, and it means that everybody that runs into those houses where and those planets where you have involved there, they're gonna be a part. They're gonna be aware. They're gonna see what's happening to you, and how you are changing, and that's going to contribute to their thinking. It could be something as simple, let's say with studies. I was studying, my first degree was English linguistics and politics and governance. And next to me was a student of biomedical, whatnot. So I was seeing her doing all these mathematical courses, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. And she saw me reading Hobbes and philosophy and whatnot, and she looked at me and she said, like, oh my gosh, your degree is hard. Your degree is hard. I could never do this. Okay, so we got exposed to the fact that I'm not really studying grass sciences, and and we both understood that. Okay, I was just thinking, well, it's hard, but this is life. Every degree is hard. I didn't know that I was taking the most difficult degree in humanities. Fine, okay, like it was interesting, and it's one of those things. So that was very like personal between us. It didn't come out. Okay, there was not doing any activism to show you that humanities is actually very difficult. Nothing. We were living together, sharing this, and this is it. Um, but then if she would talk to her people, then she would say, I have a roommate that studies humanities, and you won't believe what she's doing. You won't believe how hard work it is. You think it's grass science. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Okay. And in that way, there could be a bit of like an agency where, where I'm doing something more by just being, I'm doing something more in changing the opinion that we have on study topics in academia. Okay? It can be something this light, but it can also be if it contacts your 10th house, your third house to some degree, and your or sixth house and your 11th house. This can also mean that you're publicly speaking about this. You're a public figure in regards to it. Okay, that is where another type of action is being taken. So, for example, when I went to university, I didn't know that I would be a TA in my second degree. And so there are certain things that I was just talking about, or maybe even talking about in my Facebook. And then when I became a TA, those received certain exposure that allowed me to be doing the satire that I did eventually. Although I wasn't aware of it during the satire. You feel powerless when this happens to you as a military veteran. But it was actually me breaking myths around dealing with mental health crisis that people got exposed to big time, and then suddenly my students were looking up to me. They're like, oh shit, like, oh, this is a person who deals with mental health crises. Oh, damn. Okay, and although I was transforming because I realized this is not me having, neural imbalance, but me surviving trauma. So that can be triggered by a transit, but that is also the outer planet to inner planet. You're not just going at it alone. It's not just zwischenmenschlich, there is also the society and the spirit of the time involved. This is why this is my signature reading. This is why this is the thing that I look at, whether it was composites when I just began to do astrology and I penetrated the market with small products. Okay, got Mercury in the second house, small products, small readings that are to do with relationships. Mercury ruling the 7th and 4th. And I was doing Blue Ocean for the community that I was at. Nobody was looking at this. Nobody was thinking to look at this initial dating sequences. And now I'm doing this for your nativity, okay, for your natal reading. When you have this, it's going to change the way you look at yourself in relation to the society and the times that you are living in. We all have some of it, but some people have more. Okay, I have a mystic rectangle in my natal chart that somewhat involves also the outer planets. If I count in the Juno mystic rectangle, which actually a client of mine discovered this. I did not know natal astrology, and she was given a composite reading. She wanted to learn.
my approach to composite, because she was so impressed by it. And then she gave me like a natal reading on the go, and I found out what is mystic rectangle. I did not know I have, and I have kind of like almost two of them. um, I noticed that a lot of my clients had either the Grand Cross or the Mystic Rectangle or even both. Those are considered very rare shapes. Okay, so of course I'm an outer planet girl going through outer planet transits. That means that a lot of you are going through this. That means that of all the many astrologers that are going to give you tremendously great information, they can even mislead you when it comes to the outer planets to inner planets, because they are going to read it with the seven planets or the lots, and they can give you tremendously great information that is useful. But when it comes to you with the spirit of the time, they may, because of the nature of their profession, they may try to get you to, let's say, take responsibility of your personal life while you should actually be doing activism. Okay, and this is where therapy can go wrong. For example, if you have a Neptune in your seventh house, you're not necessarily codependent. You're not necessarily relationship addicted. You're not necessarily, oh, I need to go and study this lesson, and then when I finally studied it, no, you have the Neptune in your seventh house. It means lack of boundaries in relationships. It means patterns of addiction, codependency. If it's not natal, it's not chronic. It will pass when Neptune, and you need to surrender it. And your psychologist could be your next romantic partner, and you're going to have another misery with that. So you need an astrologer for this, but if it doesn't cover outer planets to inner planets, you will be still in this. Mm, well, maybe you have this thing you need to go to see therapy, or because they wouldn't pay attention to that happening. Okay, there are some astrologers that pay attention to outer planets to inner planets and their transits. I know Adam Ellenbus does that. And I know Truth in Aspect Astrology does that. I know Lada Duncheva does that. Um, uh, and Lada Duncheva also has a great teaching that you can help other people with the outer planets, that they're dealing with such difficulty, which is a great teaching. It's very inspiring teaching that has helped me to delineate relational abuse, okay, the Pluto themes, and kind of like what to do about that. Uh, and when you are kind of a person that has more than one aspect like this, when you are the kind of a person, maybe let's have Moon to Aries stuff, then it's really a big deal for you, and it's really important for you to understand that those things cannot be covered in your everyday traditional astrological reading, as well as it's a high chance that you will be misled as to what you're supposed to do with the Aries house if you don't pay attention to Aries in Aries when it contacts your personal planet. Okay, um, so how much of a problem it could be? Something that, yeah, it's a misleading, but it's a non-issue. You can still deal with that, or it can be something like Neptune going through your seventh, and you're wasting a lot of money on therapy, and everybody's telling you you're codependent, where you're having a transit. The minute Mercury is going to go out of your seventh, you're not going to be codependent if you don't have other significations that say that you are. If you don't have like a stellium in the seventh, where you could be way more focused about relationships and about yourself, or the ruler of the first in the seventh, you don't have a reason to think you're crazy, or you're codependent. You're just having a transit, and during this transit, there are themes in your relationship that you just surrender. And this is also where you come to change your mind about codependent people. You think maybe codependent people are weak, codependent people are giving their power away. Codependent people understand that there are currents. If it's Neptune related, there are certain currents that they're not in control of, and there is a certain surrender that they have to do with this aspect in their life. And there's a great Neptune teaching from Lada Duncheva actually that talks about Neptune in your chart where you surrender something. So natally, Neptune in your chart is where you surrender something and it just takes its own current. It is where the card of surrender is the card of enlightenment. Okay, Pluto that sextiles Neptune is the card where being in your power is the card of enlightenment. So you can understand that when Pluto makes any aspect, even the most harmonious, it gives you two energies that are one of finding your power, another is surrendering your power, and you need to act with both. So anything you have Pluto or Neptune at this time is triggering also the other that has a completely different energy. And you're gonna spend perhaps your entire life dealing with finding your power and surrendering your power. I talked about it when I talked about me being a Me Too veteran, where I was absolutely joking at myself, like, what do I want? Autonomy over my body. How do I do it? Surrender. And allow myself to act from my body non-volitionally. Kind of like the gut instinct of the rebellious feature. And I was like, this is really funny. What do I preach? Self-pleasure. What happens to me when I self-pleasure? Some energies intermesh with mine and I don't have really control over it. Like I don't initiate astral sex. I don't do that. I don't think it's on par with willing consent. And it was like sometimes I would have these experiences with energies that I don't know who they are. Okay? So that can be a part of the Pluto-Neptune. Neptune is now on my ascendant, so it's kind of like the body, and Pluto is in my 11th now, is about to go into my 12th. So that is in a very unpredictable order, the good, the bad, and the what's the meaning of all of this of outer planets to inner planets. Okay, this is my signature reading because most people they don't pay such attention to those things, or they're going to do it separately. Like Heather Ilan had a great like Pluto seminar, going through your Pluto seminar, going through your Neptune seminar, but I haven't seen people look at like, let's take a look at your chart. What are the outer planets to inner planets? They may integrate it in the reading, um, but then it's not as accentuated. And when you go to the traditional astrologers, you know, then it all you might not get. You might get other lovely stuff like zodiac releasing um, from the lots, but you don't get that. How are you with the spirit of the times? And again, the essence of it is, well, the good news is that that world that you're imagining, that you're desiring, you are bringing it. You are bringing it. The bad news is that that world that you're imagining, that you desire, that should have been here yesterday, it's up to you to be a part of the people who bring this new day with all the revolutions that it entails and the traumas and the crisis and the desperation and the isolation. Okay, so I want you to understand both of these things. That's both the good news and the bad news. I will not gaslight you, but I will not deprive you of redemption, so to speak, and definitely not deprive you of legacy. I will not be the people who say to you, you know, let's say you're like a Facebook friend of mine that said, I am the warrior of psychiatry as a science, the hoaxes around psychiatry. I am the warrior, I am the this. And she got really let down by people who were even astrologers. They were giving readings and they kind of like trying to cut her wings. So I'm very highly unlikely to do that. If something like this happens to me, first of all, say like I feel this is happening. Like I see, you know, say to me, I feel this is happening, and it's very likely something that has to do with your outer planet to inner planet. So maybe it's something like Aries, and then I can like, okay, that's probably that Aries. I feel something going on. I feel like I'm the one who's enacting it, then maybe it has to do with consultation, maybe it has to do with astrology, maybe you came here to show something different regarding to that, and that can happen. Okay, so so I don't want to say, well, I will never let you down, because I don't know. Your chart still has an energy, and I'm still a human being responding to that. Other than that, I'm less likely to make this mistake of thinking that, oh, well, you're just like being totally unrealistic of reality, and try to find a place in your chart that show that you're unrealistic of reality, because I understand that it must be some outer planet to inner planet. What seems to me like, wait, what are they even? Probably 20 years from now, or even a couple of decades from now, if it is Aries, I will be saying, oh my God, I had a client that they were saying something at that time. I thought, I don't know where they're bringing this from. And oh my God, now I understand. Okay. One like this is when I was listening to Richard Feynman talking about teeth brushing. It's like everybody has this ceremony about brushing their teeth. Who says that this is scientific? And I'm like, what does he want? It's like, oh, he's probably a petty Virgo. What does he want? And he was trying to tell us, because he was in the Manhattan Project, he was trying to tell us that fluoride stuff, and he couldn't say it, but it's kind of like that fluoride stuff. You know, he's trying to whistle blow, but there were things that he could not say. And therefore, when Feynman talked about medicine, he said he was sitting in Caltech with these people, with the researcher, with the people who doing the job. Okay, he was a scientist. It's not about the conspiracy theory. He was an insider. And sitting down, having lunch. You've been in academia, if you've been in the staff, if you've been even a TA like me, then you know that you don't just dine with the students. You can, but you have a special dining place. So you sit, even when you take your lunch, you take your lunch with other researchers and sometimes with other departments. And Feynman was a social animal, so he was speaking with people, and he said in his lecture in Caltech, he said there are amazing researchers in medicine that are busy finding cure for ailments that you didn't even think could be healed. Cancer can be healed, and there's so many things you're just not told, and the research stops the minute this works. And I'm talking about terminal. I have seen. Okay, I talked about this. I was teaching German, very basic German. Okay, and to a doctor, and she had a colleague and that was doing research in cancer, and they had a medication that terminally ill patient began to have remission. Okay, remission, it means that the cancer stops growing or becomes even smaller. Okay, less and less cancer. And so those were terminally ill people. And then as they started showing, they were very happy. They were like, oh my gosh, we found a cure to cancer. You and the 10 billion other researchers that were stopped dead in the tracks once they found out, the research budgets suddenly stopped. And you can understand that when you find results like a cure for cancer, usually it's not difficult to raise funds, huh? Huh? If you had funds, you're supposed to have a booming funds towards your research. The research budget stopped, and these people died. Okay, one of billions such cases. And here I heard it from a person who knew the researcher. I just came to teach German. I was working on my thesis. We were talking about my thesis. There was philosophy of medicine, and it's kind of like EBM and so on and so forth. And the word cancer came up, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I have to tell you a story. I have to tell you this. I've seen this." And okay, and you can't get these people to speak because they're being threatened. And so it's not that there is no good medicine. It's just that that's not what's being sold under the counter. And what is being sold under the counter, and this is where the other Feynman comes, it's the same Feynman that says there are people who are busy making cure and for ailments you didn't even think you could heal. And then, bless you, there are people, researchers that are busy coming up with the ailments that hardly anybody can cure. Okay? Aries in Aries. And I had an even more personal thing, and I will tell it. Um, I had a good friend. I'm not going to say which of the natural disasters because this is his project, and he woke up with an equation, and it's his. Um, but the thing is that we were venturing in, and we are trying to get research funds. We're talking about with researchers, not yet, with researchers, and we're talking about the entire like climate thingy. And me, of course, having Uranus in my tent, I was thinking about interfering in the chaotic nonlinear system that has to do with the climate. And I was telling to the lecturer, well, we can not only, when we get this, we can not only um, tell people, well, there's a natural disaster coming up, but we can also interfere so that if you think about the heart palpitation, we have devices that kind of regulate that. We could also interfere. He was staring at me white. His face was white, okay, and he had a darker skin complexion, okay. He was white, he fainted. Um, and my friend was kind of like, okay, he's not a physicist, he's like a mechanical, what now? It's like, no, you can't. It's told me, you can't say these things next to this person. He doesn't have this length of insight that you have. Only to find out that things that I was learning about, like using sound waves to regulate temperature, and so on and so forth, that I was thinking it seemed like a good idea at its time, are being used in a way that in 2023 there is no such thing as natural disaster. I know this because I know this. Okay, I understood that this is something that we can do. I just didn't understand that A, it is being practiced, and B, it is being practiced in malefic ways. There is no such thing as natural disaster in 2023. It's no such thing. We're spraying clouds. We're bombing in the ocean. Okay, it's not even just pollution. Of course there is pollution, but also we're spraying clouds, we're bombing in the ocean, we're setting fires, we're besieging cities through that. And we call it climate change. What happened to global warming? You can't talk about global warming. No, global warming, it means all the bad things that we do. Let's blame the people. The farts that you make or the farts that your cow makes are horrible. And so you can't grow broccoli either in Holland. Why? It doesn't make any sense. Because you fart. Broccoli makes you fart. No. Okay? That's not what's causing, excess carbon emission. Cutting trees and having an even more booming of industrialized revolution, that is. Okay? I was hoping Uranus and Taurus, we're going to have a technology that is in alignment with nature. Some of it we can, absolutely, there was, and with Jupiter and Uranus, there will be discoveries, but that's not how it's generally being used. What's the higher meaning of all of this? Well, there are many things, such unnatural natural disasters were happening in experiments for probably a century or centuries ago, at least a century ago. And people could not even conceive it, and if they could, they would be considered crazy. If you said, I am seeing they using frequencies and sound waves to change the climate, you would be prescribed something, you would go have a lobotomy forced on you. Okay? But when it's happening worldwide, people are beginning to wake up and like, wait. I'm seeing clouds sprayed, and they're besieging the city instead of assisting the city. They're closing the access to water and not allowing anybody to come out or in. They're besieging the city. They're not helping a crisis. And now when it's happened with multiple cities, people are like worldwide, okay, there's something going on here, and it's not the way you would expect a natural disaster to be treated. They're not doing it because they're stupid. They're doing it because they have a certain intention to get to take over this land and deprive people of their properties, their lands, their crops, their access to water, and their access to clear air. Who are they? Well, probably the people that tell us you will own nothing and be happy. This is outer planets to inner planets, okay? Uranus in my 10th house is not just astrology. This is outer planets to inner planets. You see, this is very meta, okay? That little chunk there was very meta. And if you're having this in your chart and if it's being triggered, then absolutely one of the leading voices that you definitely would like to get a reading with and will probably benefit a lot from speaking with each other, even regardless of that reading. Now, you say, okay, Shirley, I want to get a reading with you. Okay, enough. I want to get a reading. How do I contact you? I have a Twitter account that is Tali, Tali, Sheer, Sheer, on Twitter. Strudel, Tali Sheer. You DM me on Twitter, okay? As per now, I don't know of any fake accounts in my name, so if you're mailing that, I don't have the blue V check for, like, you probably understand why, right? You won't. It would be very unpredictable if I had that. So you can speak with me there. I'm not going to turn you to Instagram because that would there's very likely to cause troubles. But this is where you can contact me, okay? You can understand why I don't have a page and a domain, right? You got it by now, okay? You can understand that by now. But I am like on social media, and you can DM me, and we can set up, we can book an appointment. For your safety, you can do the payment part when we are live, when we are told, when you see me, I can either like have a Zoom call with you or something. And then when you see, okay, you see this face, you see this nose, okay, you see this. I know that there are deep fakes in this, but for now, this is still possible. And then you can make the purchase. How do you pay me? Now you understand that I'm not just going to tell you, well, my reading is cost so and so and so, and you pay me to that and that. Because we are having a situation where at any given time the entire coinage could go bonkers in favor of some digital coin that none of us wants to use or hold. So, or social credit score, which is very much scheduled to happen. So, how do you do economy in this situation? Well, go back to what do I need? What can I give? I can give you an astrological reading. What do I want? So it can be either a Christopher Warnock talisman, okay? Then I'm living in Israel. There is an easier shipping. I think it's $55. He told me for shipping instead of 90. So we can talk. I can tell Chris that Christopher that you are the person who will be paying that, and you can purchase a talisman for me in favor of the reading. And the things I'd like to have, like the Algol talisman, the Andromeda talisman, Venus Three Graces is recommended for me. The Moon Crab talisman is recommended for me. Even the Mars talisman. So you can purchase one of these for me. You can purchase a rectification course by by Chris Brennan and Patrick Watson. That would give me another skill of rectifying your chart, and then that would allow me to do zodiac releasing for you in readings. So this is another possibility. You can order a lighter reading, kind of like a 30 minutes reading, where we just go on the clock and we might be able to talk about, let's say, one aspect or one question that you have. It doesn't have to be the signature reading. It can be something that's like protected for you, your protection year, or something like that, or specific question that can probably be your Uranus in your chart. Usually, why would you see astrologers? This is a Nicholas Stoyanovich tip that goes with Placidus house system. So you could have a 30 minutes read with me, and then for that you can either have a talismanic oil by Sphere and Sundry, which I also like. The planets that are good for me are Venus, their moon stuff is like really potent oil that you put on your body, and I am not yet like doing that, but definitely anything Venusy, whether it's Pisces, Libra, or Taurus, is absolutely recommended. The Asclepius, the latest Asclepius with the Ashvini Nakshatra involved is something that I would um, um, desire, or Christopher Chow. There are a lot of Christophers. Christopher Chow is also Venus. He has Venus in Pisces. That's also something that could work for me. Because my Jupiter is in Saturn sign, and because I am night sect, then Saturn talismans and Jupiter talismans are less the preferred option for me. But anything like fixed stars talismans, constellation talismans, house-based talismans of wealth and stuff, and Venus talismans, and the rest of the planets. Okay, Mercury, I've been doing wonders with Mercury Open Doors by Door Key Subset by Sphere and Sundry. Beautiful. Venus, I've had the Helio Astro Venus talisman. I'm very happy. I got the oil and the butter. I think it's being restocked. It's great product. For me, okay, it's going to work differently for you because it's natal chart based. So those are things that are absolutely a possibility. And then you ship it to Israel. This is the pitfall, that you ship it to Israel. It's from the United States to Israel, so it's quite expensive. And that is a way to get like a lighter reading with me. I still do readings that I offer to people as donations. So for example, if you give $450, you go on Twitter. I shared a post by a person who needs medical aid, and they basically need in housing, in food, in medical aid. And if you donate $450 to this person, you get a full reading from me with a signature reading if you need it. Now, if you want the outer planets to inner planets, you do need to email me, and you need to email me your exact birth time by birth certificates. Take the time. Okay, take the time. I don't know how to do rectification. You have to come with the time. And to outer planets and inner planets, perhaps I could do more. I could be more flexible about timing. But it just means that we won't have the exact degree of your ascendant, but it's still a possibility. And then you write to me, you say that you want, Shirley, I want your signature reading. Okay, your signature reading. And this is the longer reading. Okay, my signature reading is for a talisman, for a course, like the rectification course, that is a talisman in stone. Okay, it's a signature reading. But you write to me, you write me your birth time, okay, birthplace and the hour, and you tell me, I want your signature reading. Please tell me if there is a reason for me to go on board, and you tell me also why do you want my signature reading. It is not an audition. The only reason I'm doing this is because if you don't have outer planets to inner planets intense aspects in transit, or you're unlikely not to be fit for a reading. If you don't have that, there's no reason for you to pay $400 for a talisman including shipping, or $400 for a rectification course, and not really get the right reading for you. And so if you want a signature reading, please write me ahead of time. I take a look at your chart, and you tell me why do you want the signature reading. Okay, in your reasoning, I should be able to locate the outer planets to inner planets, and then I'm like, okay, I see there's meat here, let's go on a reading. Because this is a significant amount of money. It's a big expense. And I don't want you to, you could get another reading that is good for you, but maybe you want a reading from somebody else that maybe is cheaper, and that is okay. Okay, so you write to me, why do you want the reading? This is not an audition. It's just to make sure that you spend the money on something that's actually beneficial to you. and that I won't just, you know, take, you know, a talisman from you that cost you your best money, and give you something that's like, oh well, maybe you had this kind of like a sex style and it didn't mean too much to you, and you would get just like an astrological reading, which you could be like very satisfied with, or you like, oh my gosh, I wanted a signature reading, and I okay. So if I say to you, okay, I don't see here anything in particular that's being triggered, and you tell me the why it is, and I see it looks to me like it's actually stemming from, let's say, a Saturn or a Sadhusati or something like that, I can tell you we can go on a reading. These are the things that I do. Okay, I do look at your natal chart. I do look at planetary aspects and houses and rulership. I do look at perfection years. I do I can look at your solar return chart. Those are things that I do. If you want to still get this reading from me, wonderful, still same pricing, but it's not going to be the signature reading, because this is not where I, at least to the best, I could be wrong, but to the best of my abilities, or to what I noticed from your chart, what is popping up for me is not the case. And this is not me rejecting you, it's me making sure you spend your money on something that you will be satisfied with. Okay, that being said, if you are eligible for this, for the signature reading, please understand I do not spare from you talking about the possible traumas that can be involved in this, while I don't go like to all the like extreme cases, because hey, I'm a human being too. I will do, like, if you have something to talk with me, and I will be talking about that with you, but I also will be talking about what's the meaning of all of this and what can be done and how you can be more effective in your action or non-action. If it's a Neptune, maybe you just can understand that this is where I need to have a certain amount of surrender, and you can understand that this is not your giving up on life, becoming desperate, learned helplessness. It's just like Neptune requires a certain surrender. So that's it for today, and I'll see you in my next videos. Bye bye.